begins with the book of knowledge, but he really wants to explain what he views knowledge as. And then he ends that book, and I actually did a commentary on that book. He ends that book with a tribute to aql. Now, aql is translated usually as intellect, but aql as modern conceptions of intellect is just simply not correct. Intellectus to the medieval scholastics was very different from the concept that we have of intellect today. Intellect today is more seen as ratiocination, this idea that we think about things, and we use the intellect to do math or to explore sciences and things like that. Intellect is more of a mystical or spiritual component in the Islamic tradition and also in the Christian tradition, because intellect is seen as immaterial. So in Western society today, they actually view intellect is still a mystery in neuroscience. So they don't really understand where consciousness comes from. They know that the brain certainly is like a hard drive, but there's like a cloud that they don't know if it's there or not. Is it all embedded in the hard drive, or is there this immaterial cloud? And they have not come to any conclusive determinations about that. If they're honest, modern materialists think that we'll find it, but the reality of it is they don't know. And so for us, it is the cloud, that it's immaterial. It transcends just the apparatus that God has given us, that we need, obviously. We need the brain, and we need these dendritic connections. We need to have healthy brains. Dementia, we know that certain things show up in dementia that causes the breakdown of the intellect. But that's only the hardware. That's not what thought is or where it comes from. And is there a conscious presence even when the person's not there, like in a coma? Arguably, from our perspective, there is, which would mean that it wouldn't be insane to speak to somebody who they're telling you is brain dead or something like that. Because we know that the Prophet ﷺ spoke to the people in the grave, even though there's a khilaf about, was that a miracle for him alone, or do they hear? But we know that the Prophet ﷺ said that when you bury a person, that person will hear the sandal, the actual sounds of the footsteps as people leave the grave. So the point being is that really the aql in our tradition is a very mysterious and profound thing. And thoughts are really, the source of thoughts remains a mystery in Western science, but for us, we believe that the source of thoughts, we actually have a science of khawatir. So there are nafsani thoughts, shaitani thoughts, malakani thoughts, and rabbani thoughts. Even though they're all from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but the asbab of those thoughts are demonically, egoistically inspired thoughts, demonically inspired thoughts, angelically inspired thoughts, and then lordly inspired thoughts. And there's a whole science to that, that in our tradition that originally came out of Imam al-Muhasibi's insights into it. So that's the book, and then he goes into Qawaid al-Aqaid. So after the book of knowledge, he begins faith, because faith in our tradition is based on knowledge. And then he goes into Asrar al-Tahara. And what's important, and this is really distinct about even though there are people before Imam Gazali that looked at what are called the hikam, the wisdoms behind traditions. He really wanted to help people get out of a formalistic approach to the religion, to where it was perfunctory, that these are all outward things that don't have inward meaning. So he really saw that it was very important for people to understand the spiritual realities behind these things that we're doing. When the Prophet ﷺ said, "At-tahur shatrul iman," he did not simply mean that water purification, what we call lustrations or the wudu, water purification is half of iman. Tahur is the purification of the soul. And so what you're doing when you're doing wudu, when you're washing your hands of the sins, which is why some of the scholars consider that water is not reusable because the sins get washed away in it. And so the face, removing any sins from the face, and the eyes, and the cleaning the mouth, all these things, he shows the spiritual insights that will really help a person to perform them. The secrets of the prayer, the secrets of zakat, the secrets of fasting, the secrets of hajj. And then, and this is what I find really stunning, is that when he deals with all the ruba' ibadat, he goes through aqidah, iman, and then he goes through the 5 pillars of Islam. The very first thing that he brings into focus is the adab of reciting Quran, because of the centrality of the recitation of Quran as an act of worship in our religion. This is really important because the Prophet ﷺ said he was commanded in the Quran to worship Allah and to recite the Quran. He says, I was commanded to worship Allah and to recite the Quran. So this is really important. And then he has fi adhkar wa da'wat. So these are the awrad that the Prophet ﷺ did, and he did many, but the most important one is the Quran. And then the tartib al-awrad, like how to do, and then ihya al-layl, so giving some portion of the night. Even if it's night prayers begin according to the Malikis after Maghrib. So giving some portion of the night, even if you just pray 2 rakats in excess of the sunan rakats after Isha, you've given some portion of the night that is devotional. So that's really important because the Prophet ﷺ said, help me help you get across the sirat. And the way he said to do that was to give him a portion of the night, like just to give some portion of the night.